Think about it for a second. That simple act, picking up a pen, maybe opening a blank document on your computer, it feels pretty basic, right?
Yeah.
Something you might do without much thought for, I don't know, an email or a quick note.
Sure. Completely routine for most of us.
But what if that, mundane action holds a surprising, really profound power?
Now that's interesting.
A power that goes way beyond just putting words on a page to communicate with other people.
It absolutely does. While we're mostly trained to see writing as that external communication tool, its most transformative power might actually be the communication it enables with ourselves.
Okay, that's the core idea we're really digging into today.
Yeah.
We're doing a deep dive into the real, often sort of untapped power of writing.
Yeah.
Let's forget grammar lessons or story arcs just for a moment.
Right, move beyond the mechanics.
Exactly. We're exploring writing as this dynamic tool for thinking, for self-discovery, for actually solving problems, and maybe even for strategic action. We've been looking into a really fascinating source that explores all these different dimensions. And our mission today is basically to pull out the key insights about how you can leverage this tool you already have.
And the source frames it brilliantly, I think. Not just as a skill, but as this fundamental mechanism with just, multifaceted benefits.
Right.
It's pitched as a way to gain mental clarity, maybe accelerate personal growth, navigate challenges more effectively, boost creativity, and genuinely understand your own inner landscape better.
Okay, so where do we start? Let's maybe begin at the beginning with what the source presents as a pretty foundational idea right there in its first chapter. Writing is a tool for thinking itself.
Yes.
It argues that writing isn't just the output of thinking, but it's actually a mechanism for thinking, specifically for externalizing thoughts.
And that distinction is absolutely critical. Look, our minds are incredible, obviously, but our internal processing space, our working memory, it's limited.
Yeah, things get crowded in there.
Exactly. Thoughts often swirl around. They're interconnected. Sometimes they contradict each other, but they can remain frustratingly sort of nebulous inside our heads. But when you write them down, you are literally moving them from that sometimes chaotic internal space onto a tangible external medium, the page or the screen.
So it's kind of like offloading the mental burden, giving your brain a sort of physical workspace to operate in.
Precisely. And that's where the power really comes from. By externalizing those thoughts, you actually reduce the cognitive load on your working memory.
Okay.
The thoughts become these stable objects you can actually look at, examine, rearrange outside your head.
I see.
And this tangibility lets you see your ideas much more clearly than you possibly could when they were just, internal chatter. You can identify connections you didn't notice before, maybe spot logical inconsistencies, and you can begin to structure those messy thoughts into coherent concepts. This is the mechanism, really, by which writing helps clarify ideas, solve problems, and ultimately understand your own mind better. You kind of see your thinking patterns laid bare.
That makes a lot of sense. You're not just recording thoughts, you're actively engaging with them in a totally new way.
Yeah.
So what's a practical step someone could take based on this idea, something actionable?
Well, the source is very direct about this. Start a daily writing habit.
Okay.
And it doesn't need to be huge, even just 10 minutes. The consistent act of getting thoughts out of your head and onto paper or screen can be incredibly effective at organizing that internal landscape and significantly reducing that feeling of mental clutter that, let's face it, so many of us struggle with.
10 minutes.
Yeah.
That actually feels quite achievable for most people, I think.
It really is.
Okay, so building on that idea of understanding yourself, the text dedicates a whole section, it almost calls it your mind's private gym, to journaling.
That analogy is just perfect, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just like a gym routine builds physical strength and endurance, journaling, as they frame it, builds mental and emotional resilience. The source positions it as a practice specifically for processing the often complex flow of emotions, for tracking personal growth over time, and really deepening self-awareness by paying conscious attention to your inner state.
And there's an inherent safety to it too, right? It feels private.
That safety aspect is absolutely key. Journaling, as described here, is this judgment-free zone you create purely for yourself.
Right.
You can express absolutely anything, your deepest fears, wildest dreams, raw frustrations, quiet triumphs, without any concern at all about how it will be perceived by anyone else. And just externalizing those emotions on the page, giving them a name and a shape, can significantly reduce their intensity and help you gain perspective. It allows you to see them not as these overwhelming forces, but as components of your experience that can be understood and processed.
So for someone new to journaling, maybe someone listening right now, how do you even begin? I mean, staring at a blank page can feel pretty intimidating.
Totally. And the source provides a really practical doorway about use prompts. Key questions can act as catalysts. Just asking yourself something like, what exactly am I feeling right now and maybe why? Or what's one specific thing I learned about myself or the world today? Those kinds of questions can provide an easy entry point and guide your reflection when you're feeling unsure where to start or just feel a bit stuck.
I like that idea, like a guided workout for the mind. Sticking with that gym analogy. Okay, now, shifting gears a bit, maybe from introspection more towards action. The source talks about how successful individuals apparently use writing strategically. One chapter title even hints, maybe a bit provocatively, at Write Like a Millionaire.
Yeah, that title is definitely designed to grab your attention.
Right.
But the substance behind it is really powerful. It highlights that writing isn't just confined to, creative expression or quiet reflection. It's actually a potent tool in the realm of achievement and pursuing goals. According to the source, successful people frequently use writing not just to communicate outwards, but to actively plan their future, track their progress towards objectives, and ultimately make clearer, more informed decisions.
How does putting goals on paper actually make that much of a difference, though? Is it just the act itself?
It's about transformation. Articulating goals and strategies in writing transforms them from these sort of abstract desires floating around in your head into concrete, tangible commitments. Writing forces a level of precision that pure thought often lacks.
Interesting.
It demands that you define what you want to achieve and, crucially, outline how you actually plan to get there. This act of creating a written roadmap makes the goal feel more real, more actionable, and frankly, easier to break down into manageable steps.
So it's really about translating that ambition into a concrete plan you can actually follow day to day.
Precisely. And the practical application here really boils down to consistency.
Okay.
Regularly writing down your high-level goals, then breaking them down into specific action plans, and then, this is key, periodically reflecting on your progress against those written plans. It creates this powerful, ongoing feedback loop.
The reflection part.
Yes. This constant engagement with your objectives through writing helps you stay aligned, helps you identify roadblocks maybe you didn't foresee, and helps you maintain momentum.
Engaging with goals through writing, rather than just setting them once and hoping for the best, that feels like a really key distinction.
It is.
Okay, the text then delves pretty deep into emotional mastery, presenting writing almost as a genuinely therapeutic tool.
Yeah, this section really focuses on writing's capacity to help us process complex, often quite difficult emotions and experiences. The core idea is that by narrating your own story, writing down what happened, the sequence of events, the whole spectrum of feelings you experienced, you can gain vital perspective on those events and your reaction to them.
So like creating a bit of distance maybe to see things more clearly.
Exactly that. The act of structuring your potentially chaotic experience into a narrative, even if it's just for your own eyes, provides a sense of order and maybe even control over something that might have felt overwhelming at the time. And this narrative process can be incredibly healing. It allows you to acknowledge, articulate, and therefore begin to integrate feelings that might otherwise remain suppressed or just feel too big to handle.
If you're, say, right in the thick of some emotional turmoil, what's a concrete way to use writing then?
The source suggests a really powerful, though quite simple technique: writing letters.
Letters? To whom?
Well, write letters to yourself or perhaps to the person or the situation involved in the emotional experience. But here's the crucial part. You don't necessarily need to send them. The value lies entirely in the act of writing itself, giving voice to your feelings, your frustrations, your pain, your confusion, just getting it down on paper. This externalization can really help release their grip on you and, in many cases, facilitate a sense of clarity or even closure, regardless of whether the external circumstances actually change.
That approach offers a way to process really intense feelings safely without needing external validation or response.
Exactly.
The text also covers writing as a highly effective method for solving problems.
Right. When you're faced with a challenge, especially a complex one, writing can help you dissect it far more effectively than just thinking about it internally, letting it swirl around. It kind of compels you to break the problem down into its constituent parts and analyze each component systematically.
How does it bring structure to that process, problem solving?
Well, think about it. When you write down a problem, You were forced to define it clearly.
True.
You can then list all the contributing factors you can identify, maybe explore potential root causes, examine it from different angles. This moves you from what might be a circular, maybe chaotic mental state
Yeah, going around in circles.
to a more linear, organized, and analytical process. It essentially makes the abstract problem concrete and dissectable.
And what's the practical tip here for problem solving with writing?
Actually, simple list making is surprisingly powerful here.
Okay.
A classic is the pros and cons list. Writing down the arguments for and against potential solutions or decisions makes the considerations much clearer and maybe less influenced by immediate emotion.
Right. Takes the heat out of it a bit.
Exactly. Or you could list out several potential solutions to a problem, and then, for each one, write down the likely outcomes. This kind of structured approach, facilitated by the visual and tangible nature of writing, helps you evaluate options more objectively and hopefully arrive at better decisions.
Lists are definitely underrated tools, I think.
Agreed.
Now, for anyone who feels maybe blocked creatively or just wants to tap into their, creative side more, the source brings up a practice that's become quite well known. The magic of morning pages.
Ah, yes. A concept widely popularized by Julia Cameron in her book, The Artist's Way.
Right.
And the source highlights this practice not just for artists, but really for anyone looking to clear out mental clutter and access deeper thoughts.
Can you just describe what morning pages actually are for someone who hasn't heard of them?
Sure. The practice is pretty straightforward. First thing in the morning, ideally before you do much else.
Yeah.
You write 3 full pages of stream of consciousness. The key is to keep the pen moving without stopping, without censoring yourself, without worrying about grammar, punctuation, spelling, or even making logical sense.
Wow. Okay. No rules, basically.
Essentially, no rules except keep writing. You write down whatever comes into your head, anxieties, random observations, stuff for your to-do list, fragments of dreams, silly thoughts, anything.
3 pages. First thing does seem like quite a commitment, though. What's the actual purpose?
It is a commitment, but the goal isn't to produce polished prose. It's more like mental excavation. Think of it like sweeping out the debris in your mind, getting all the miscellaneous thoughts, the worries, the trivialities out of your head and onto the page. This act of clearing the conscious mind, of offloading that surface level noise, creates space. It's thought to foster creativity by allowing less conscious, maybe more original thoughts to surface that might otherwise be buried under all that mental clutter. It's like a ritualistic clearing of the channel.
So the practical insight is literally just do it. Commit to the practice.
Exactly. Make morning pages a daily habit. The source really stresses that consistency is what truly unlocks the benefits, that reduction of mental clutter, the freeing up of creative energy, and potentially uncovering surprising insights that just emerge from that free writing process.
That connects quite directly to another point the source makes.
Yeah.
The importance of writing, just to remember things. Ideas can be incredibly fleeting, can't they?
Oh, incredibly so. That insightful observation you had during a conversation, or that unexpected idea that popped into your head while you were in the shower, or maybe a striking image you saw.
Yeah, gone in a second.
They can vanish just as quickly as they appeared if you don't capture them somehow. The source really emphasizes that writing them down is the single most effective way to ensure they aren't lost forever.
And once they're captured, they become something more than just a fleeting thought.
They become raw material. Seeds for future development, you could say. A half-formed thought jotted down today could become the basis for a significant project weeks or months from now. A striking phrase captured in a notebook might spark a whole piece of writing later on. Writing essentially transforms those fleeting mental events into stable data points that you can revisit, connect, and expand upon when you actually have the dedicated time and mental energy. It's about building a reservoir of potential ideas.
So the practical advice is basically always be ready to capture. Have something on hand.
Precisely. Cultivate the habit of capturing. Keep a dedicated idea journal. Use a simple notes app on your phone, maybe even just a stack of index cards in your pocket. The key is to have a low-friction system ready so you can jot down thoughts, observations, inspirations, even just questions the moment they occur, no matter where you are. Don't trust your memory for those sparks.
Good advice. This whole process of capturing and reflecting, it seems like it would naturally lead to something bigger, something more foundational. The source discusses how writing helps build your personal philosophy.
Yes, this is where writing serves as a tool for articulating your deepest held beliefs, your core values, and the fundamental principles that actually guide your decisions consciously or unconsciously.
Yeah.
These aren't always obvious, even to ourselves. They can remain unexamined assumptions operating below the surface of our conscious thought.
So how does writing help bring them into focus, make them more conscious?
Well, the very act of trying to put your beliefs and values into words forces a certain clarity. You have to grapple with why you believe what you believe. What are your non-negotiables? What principles do you genuinely want to live by? Writing about these fundamental questions helps you define and solidify a coherent personal philosophy.
Okay.
And once that's articulated, that philosophy serves as a kind of internal compass, making future decisions feel more aligned and maybe less arbitrary. It's really about consciously choosing the framework for your life.
What's the practical approach to using writing for this specific purpose?
The source suggests regularly writing essays or reflections specifically focused on these core beliefs and values. And importantly, it's not just a one-time exercise.
So it evolves.
Exactly. Revisit these writings over time. See how your understanding changes, how your perspective shifts as you have new experiences. This ongoing practice of writing and reflecting on your philosophy is a continuous process of self-discovery and self-definition.
Now, I imagine for many people, trying any of these writing practices we've talked about brings them face to face with a pretty significant internal obstacle. The source addresses this directly with the concept of the inner writer versus the inner critic.
Yes, the formidable inner critic.
Right.
This is that internal voice that constantly sows seeds of self-doubt, whispers that your ideas are unoriginal, that your writing just isn't good enough, and demands a level of perfection that is utterly paralyzing.
Yeah, that voice sounds familiar.
It's arguably the single biggest barrier to creative expression and even just using writing freely for personal exploration.
And the inner writer is, what's the counterpoint?
That's the authentic creative voice, the part of you that is curious, that wants to explore, connect ideas, and just express itself without judgment. The source emphasizes that a crucial step toward unlocking the power of writing and actually finding joy in the process is learning to recognize the inner critic's voice for what it is, often a separate, unhelpful, maybe even fear-based entity, and deliberately separating it from the voice of the inner writer, especially during the generative phase. The critic should absolutely not be allowed in the room while the writer is trying to create.
So how do you practically manage that internal conflict, that internal battle?
The most vital practical insight here is this. Give yourself permission to write freely without judgment, especially in the initial stages.
Just let it flow.
Yes, consciously tell that critical voice to take a hike, essentially. Your only job in the first draft or during a free writing session like morning pages is to get thoughts, ideas, and feelings down on the page. Editing, refining, correcting, that's the job of the critic, sure, but it comes much, much later. The priority is always expression first, editing second.
That permission feels incredibly freeing, actually.
It should be.
Okay, finally, the text touches on a really powerful, maybe more long-term dimension of writing.
Yeah.
Writing as a legacy.
Yes. This is the idea that your written words possess a kind of permanence that your spoken words or even your physical presence don't. They can serve as a lasting legacy, offering insights, stories, wisdom, perspective to future generations, whether that's your own family, your community, or simply anyone who happens to read your words years, maybe even decades from now.
Wow. So it's a way to kind of extend your influence and share your journey beyond your own lifetime.
Exactly. Your unique experiences, your thoughts on the world, the lessons you've learned through challenges and triumphs when you capture them in writing, they become a kind of timeless gift.
Right.
They offer future readers a window into your world, allow them to potentially learn from your journey, and create a connection that can transcend time itself.
And what's the practical step toward creating this kind of legacy through writing?
Well, simply consider compiling your writings. Whether it's a formal memoir, maybe a collection of essays or poems, or even just a curated selection of your journal entries that feel meaningful. The act of organizing and potentially sharing your written work makes your journey and the wisdom you've hopefully gained accessible and preservable for those who come after you.
That's a powerful thought. Now, this source also includes a fantastic practical resource, a whole section dedicated just to writing prompts.
That's right. And that's so helpful because sometimes the hardest part is just starting, right?
Yeah.
Facing that blank page.
Oh boy.
These prompts are designed specifically to overcome that initial inertia.
Mhm.
They offer diverse starting points or guiding questions depending on what you might want to explore or achieve through writing in that particular moment.
Let's maybe look at just a few examples from the 20 they provide, just to give people a taste of the variety. Prompt number 1 asks you to describe a moment that fundamentally changed the course of your life.
Yeah, that's a really powerful prompt for reflective narrative writing. It encourages you to identify those pivotal points in your personal history and really try to understand their impact.
Okay, how about prompt number 8? This one feels more action-oriented. Detail a specific goal you want to achieve and map out the concrete steps you'll take to get there.
Right, that's directly tied to the strategic writing we were just discussing.
Uh-huh.
It's designed to help you translate an ambition into an actionable plan and commit it to paper, make it real.
Then there's prompt number 10, which gets a bit more philosophical. Describe in detail what happiness truly means to you.
Ooh, that's a great prompt for exploring your core values and your personal definitions. It pushes you to articulate a concept that's deeply personal, but often remains quite vague if we don't think about it.
Prompt number 12 is focused more on perspective and emotion. List 10 things you are genuinely grateful for right now and explain why for each one.
That exercise is fantastic for cultivating a positive mindset and shifting perspective. It really helps you focus on the positive aspects of your life through conscious, written reflection.
And maybe one more, prompt number 19. Write about a person who has had a significant positive impact on your life, detailing the nature of their influence.
Yeah, this prompt focuses on relational reflection and narrative. It helps you acknowledge the important people who have shaped you and really articulate the specific ways they made a difference in your life.
So the source provides 20 really distinct prompts like these, offering all these different avenues: reflection, planning, emotional processing, deep thought, storytelling, basically, to help you just start putting pen to paper or fingers to keyboard.
They really are excellent invitations to engage with writing in all the powerful ways we've explored today.
This has been a truly eye-opening deep dive, I have to say. Writing is clearly so much more than just a skill we learn in school for, essays and emails.
It really is. It's a remarkably versatile and, importantly, accessible tool. A tool for profound self-discovery, for navigating complex problems, for processing and understanding our emotional landscape, for charting a course for the future, and, as we just discussed, even for creating something that's lasts beyond our own time.
And we've covered so many practical ways to integrate this power into your life, from that simple daily 10 minutes to dedicated journaling, the kind of clearing power of morning pages, using specific prompts like the ones we mentioned to just get started, keeping an idea journal always at hand,
Right.
and writing those deeper reflections on your beliefs and values.
The key, really, as the source emphasizes throughout, is finding the practice, or maybe practices that resonate with you and simply beginning. It's not about achieving perfection, it's about engaging in the process. As the text beautifully concludes, writing is not just a practice, it's a journey to your best self.
That's a great final thought from the source.
So maybe for you listening, considering all these ways writing can illuminate and shape both your inner world and how you interact with the outer one, what is just one small writing practice, perhaps one we touched on today, that you could maybe begin today? Something that might potentially reveal something new and valuable to you.